Hello, my name is Simon, and today we're going to be doing the ACT Practice Test 3, Section 3, numbers 31 through 40. So just getting started right away with passage 4. If you haven't read it, pause the video and go do so right now. Otherwise, let's get started. So after reading a passage, it's usually a good idea to pause for about 30 seconds or so and just summarize what the passage is about and just jot it along the side so that you can look at it as you're answering the questions. So a good summary for this passage is that it's looking at how each snow crystal can have a variety of structures, and it's looking at how research into these structures can allow for a variety of benefits, which they later on mention in the passage and they go more in depth on. So with that in mind, let's go to our first question, number 31. It can reasonably be inferred from the passage that the information about the scientific study of snow is presented primarily to, so A, emphasize the importance of communication among scientists. So given our summary, we can see that communication wasn't really a huge part of this passage. So it's not A. B, explain how snow crystal facets influence snowpack in some western states. Focus of the passage wasn't on western states per se. C, showcase the varied uses of the scanning electron microscope. So the scanning electron microscope is mentioned within the passage, but once again, not the main focus. So not C, which leaves D, demonstrates some practical applications of the study of snow crystals, which is exactly what our summary is as well. So now going to the next question, number 32. According to the passage, the use of scanning electron microscopy can save money by, so we can learn more about scanning electron microscopy by looking at lines 45 through 73 in the passage. And just to summarize that briefly, essentially there's a process in which scientists are able to study the structure of snow crystals, and then they use that information to make more accurate predictions as to the amount of snow melt, so water that comes after the snow crystals melt. And from having more accurate predictions, they're able to save $38 million with each extra percent of accuracy, which is mentioned right here in line 72. So that's the main part that's mentioned. That's the only part in the passage that really talks about any monetary value. So now going back to our answers, F, encouraging scientists to make estimates. The scanning electron microscopy doesn't necessarily encourage scientists. Allowing forecasters to predict more accurately the quantity of water, that is what we're looking for. However, just to be sure, let's look at H and J. H, helping agricultural researchers identify biological problems. The scanning electron microscopy doesn't do that. J, increase in the water supply for Colorado, Montana, Utah, and Wyoming. The process itself doesn't increase water supply. It just helps make more accurate predictions. So not J as well, which leaves our answer to be G. Now 33, it can reasonably be inferred that the phrase metamorphosed conditions, lines 47 through 48, refers to, so let's go to lines 47 to 48. Just to give some context, it was the first time anyone had attempted to image snow crystals with scanning electron microscopy, which provides precise detail about the crystal shapes, structural features, and metamorphosed conditions. Then in parentheses, crystals often change once on the ground, depending on the surrounding environment. So based on the syntax and the structure of the sentence, we can assume that what's included in the parentheses is just an explanation as to the metamorphosed conditions mentioned in the sentence, just because the part in the parentheses comes right afterwards. So let's see if any of our answers match what's in the parentheses, and we see that the only one that does is C, which is the state of snow crystals after they reach the ground. So that's our answer. Now going to 34, according to the passage, the addition of electron microscopy data to the snow melt runoff model allows scientists using the model to include in their predictions detailed information about. So if we go to lines 62 through 68, this is where they talk about, or where the passage talks about incorporating the scanning electron microscopy data into the research. And from lines, let me just find it right here, from lines 46 through 49ish, the part where the part of the passage which we just looked at for the last question, we know that the electron microscopy data is just data regarding the structure of snow crystals. So with this knowledge in mind, and with lines 62 through 68, let's look at the answers. So microwave satellite data, it's not true, it's never mentioned. Structural variation of snow crystals, that is what we're looking for. However, let's look at the other answers to be sure. H, locations having the most snowfall, nope, not used in that. Biological problems related to agriculture, not that as well. So our answer here must be G. Now, 35. According to Rango, one reason that water's economic value is likely to increase by the year 2100 is that. So first, we have two little nuggets of information in this question. One, according to Rango, and two, by the year 2100. So now let's go to the passage and try to locate Rango. So we can find the part of the passage that mentions him in lines 50, and if we go after that, we can find where it mentions the year 2100 right here. And just to give some context, Rango says that following the estimates that have been made about what will happen by 2100, things are definitely warming up, he says. And then he goes on to talk about how temperature increases are gonna result in less snow crystal accumulation, which is gonna result in essentially less water because there's less snow melt. So let's go back to our answers, and we can see that given what we just read in the passage, D is the only answer that makes sense. Now going to 36, according to the passage, snowflakes have infinite variety because, so if you go to lines 1 through 6, they mention how, the passage mentions how there are so many snowflakes that fall worldwide, and as they fall, they encounter different atmospheric conditions that basically causes these snowflakes to have unique attributes. So from this passage, we can tell that snowflakes are unique just because they have different atmospheric conditions depending on where they fall. So let's try to find an answer that matches that. Enormous number of snowflakes fall worldwide for F. That's not right. G, falling snow crystals mean with varied atmospheric conditions. That is what we're looking for. However, just to be sure, let's look at H and J. So H, snow crystals fall at various rates. Nowhere in the passage is mentioned really snowflakes falling at particular rates. So not that as well. Then J, complexities in the atmosphere, slow snow crystal development. That's not true as well, just because the passage never really mentioned anything about slowing snow crystal development. So not that as well. Our answer has to be G. Now going to 37, the passage states that snowflakes differ from snow crystals in that snowflakes, we find the answer to this in the passage right from lines 15 to 17. Right over here, snow crystals are individual crystals, usually in hexagonal form, while snowflakes are collections of 2 or more crystals. So we can see that essentially snow crystals make up snowflakes. And the only answer that makes sense and represent this idea is D. So that's our answer. Now going to 38, the term designer snowflakes, line 32, refers to the fact that, so let's go to line 32, get some context. It talks about how Lebrecht created designer snowflakes in his lab by manipulating the temperature and the humidity in which they develop. Now going back to our answers, see if you can find an answer that kind of matches that. So F, no two snowflakes are alike. As mentioned earlier in the passage, but it doesn't really hold much relevance to this particular part of the passage. So not that. G, Lebrecht produces the snowflakes in his lab. That can be true. Let's look at H. Snowflakes are part of the grand design of nature. This part of the passage talking about how Lebrecht makes his own snowflakes, so not made by nature. Lebrecht snowflakes exhibit special beauty. It can be that, however, the passage never directly supports this answer. So in the case where you have a situation where both of your remaining answers can be likely, but one is more supported by the passage, you're going to want to go with that one. So our answer here is G. Now for 39, as it is used in line 59, the word critical most nearly means, so let's go to line 59. See right here, critical is used. So snow meltwater is critical to crop irrigation and hydroelectric power, as well as recreation and domestic water supplies, fishery management, and flood control. So you can use your prior knowledge. Just kind of assume that, water is pretty important for hydroelectric power as well as crop irrigation. So you think that critical is most likely going to mean something along the lines of important. Otherwise, you can just look at the way that they structure the rest of the sentence, the rest of the paragraph, and where they talk about the importance of water, especially to these western states, mention how important it is for just water supplies of a variety of states. So this entire paragraph is talking about how important water is. So it's very likely that critical means something along the lines of important. And if we go back to our answers, there's only one word that means the same, and that is vital. Now, number 40, the passage states that research about snow crystals has helped scientists do all of the following except. So if we go to lines 84 through 91, we can see right here directly they mention how crystal research is useful in predicting avalanches, designing artificial snow, and in the near future, examining air pollution. So just from this sentence alone, we know that it is used to predict avalanches. So J is off, and then we know from earlier on in the passage that it's used to gauge snow melt, and also from that sentence we just looked at, H is also not the answer because we know that it's used to design artificial snow. So the part of the passage we just looked at does mention just examining air pollution, but it never mentions how this research will be able to improve the way that they extract pollutants. So that can't be an answer, and it is what we're looking for, just because of the except right here. Now within this passage, we used a variety of methods that I'd like to kind of just summarize, go over really quickly. So one is to briefly read through the excerpt and at the very end summarize the general thought idea of the story. It's important to do this just to make sure you kind of really understood the passage, and chances are usually 2 or 3 of the questions for that section involve something that you can kind of gather from that summary. Secondly is to use the process of elimination. If you're struggling to choose an answer, the answer doesn't pop out right away, then cross off ones that you know are wrong. Now, it's much easier to choose between 2 answers than it is to choose between 4. And finally, try not to overthink it. If you have 2 answers, they both seem pretty likely, which we had occur a few times in the section that we just went through. Always go with the answer that's directly supported by the passage. If it's not directly supported by the passage, that's not your answer.